the federal government says it has suspended all of its contracts with GC Strategies, the small IT company at the heart of the Auditor General's damning report. As first reported in La Presse, the federal government has awarded GC Strategies more than 100 contracts. Radio Canada verified those contracts today, finding they have amounted to more than $239 million since 2015. Overall, 66% of the company's federal contracts came from the Canada Border Services Agency. And we found out today that all federal government contracts with GC Strategies were suspended this November. In a letter to the RCMP, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre asked it to immediately expand its existing criminal investigation into the development of the app. The Prime Minister has said the RCMP and CBSA are conducting internal investigations into any alleged wrongdoing linked to the app, but that does not seem to be enough for opposition leaders.
A company that had never before received contracts from the federal government started getting an avalanche of contracts just 3 weeks after this Prime Minister took office. The company, in fact, got $250 million for IT, even though it admits it doesn't do IT.
Let's talk about what that $60 million for ArriveCan could have bought. 125 affordable homes. 800 nurses hired. Instead, this Prime Minister spent this money on an app that doesn't work and no one uses.
Seamus O'Regan is the Minister of Labour, and he joins me now. Minister, welcome back to the show.
David, thanks.
I want to get to your announcement from today in just a second, but I want to ask you first about ArriveCan. I know this is not your department, so I don't expect you to know all of the fine print, but we've seen this reporting that a company that was very small got some contracts that added up to a very big number, north of $250 million. And there's an insinuation today from the opposition leader that maybe there's a connection to the Liberals. What's your reaction to those allegations and your response to these revelations?
Yeah, not to debate insinuations in the House or out of the House, to be honest with you. I just know that Minister LeBlanc has been very clear in the House, out of the House, that we will be as transparent as we can be about everything, we have followed due process on this. If anything went wrong, we will investigate it. I know that the head of the CBSA is on top of things as well. Look, I think that the right people are on the job. Let's just let this play out before we give into insinuations and allegations.
There were some findings in the Auditor General's report, though, Minister, about GC Strategies inviting people to whiskey tastings, inviting them out to dinners, and some questions about violations potentially of ethics rules and conduct rules. When you read those revelations and saw the reporting, what was your reaction as a cabinet minister who's now facing the heat over this as part of the government?
Listen, I don't think my reaction to allegations or insinuations matters, to be honest with you. I think ultimately let this play out. Sometimes this does not always conform to a 24/7 news cycle, but it does take time and to be thoroughly investigated. It will be thoroughly investigated.
Okay, I want to switch to your announcement today of rebranding the Climate Action Incentive Payment to the Canada Carbon Rebate. What are you hoping to accomplish with the name change?
I think accuracy, to be honest with you. Look, I mean, we do this every year when we let Canadians know how much money they will be getting back in what is now the Canada Carbon Rebate. Only because, the old name's been 8 years old. I think a rebrand is probably appropriate. But that's not the point. I mean, I think the point is accuracy of information. Like, the way that people talk about it is they refer to carbon. The way that people talk about it, and financially, the way this is happening is it is a rebate, right? And we do hope and incent, as in, incentive. It doesn't incent the kind of market behavior that we want, which is that people pay for things that have a lower price on pollution, but they are not out of cost. I mean, I think as a Newfoundlander, but it's bred in me rate mitigation, and that means affordability. That means what we faced as a province, the specter of everybody's power bills doubling and tripling, and how that just not just shattered people, but dominated our news cycle not just 24/7, but for 10 years. It is ingrained in me that you cannot do any of the things that we need to do in this country on the backs of taxpayers and ratepayers. But at the same time, we got to figure out how we lower our emissions. So we have always said that this is not perfect, but we think it's a fairly elegant and market-sensible solution to try and figure this out.
But nothing fundamentally changes with the program. It's still the same amount of money with the same criteria, going to the same people in the same way. It's just a shift in branding. So, what does that really do to change people's perceptions and understanding of this? I mean, if they weren't noticing hundreds of dollars going into their account a couple of times a year, what makes you think it will be more popular now?
No, look, the reason we came out and did a press conference today is because we do it every year to let people know, that it is $1,200 that families will get, a family of 4 in Newfoundland and Labrador, $600 for a single senior. We just announced those numbers, but it was a convenient time to say, let's just make sure that what it is a little more accurate. I'm hoping that it will be by referring this to what it is, which is a rebate, making sure that people, 8 out of 10 families, get more money back, and just making sure that people know that and understand it. Look, that's a lot of money. $1,200 a year for a family of 4, $600 for a single senior is a lot of money. People are using that money. People are banking on that money. The bottom line is, it's, very catchy what you hear behind us in the House of Commons and out and about tax, tax, tax. But, and I get it, but, the bottom line is, what happens to the money that people do rely on? There is a redistribution that takes place. The big polluters do pay more, and lower income and many middle class Canadians get this rebate. So if there's no price on pollution, there's no rebate. And a lot of people, 8 out of 10, do better with it. So it's just, we've got to make sure that we get that message across, because frankly, those are the facts. It's not spin, those are the facts. And we've got to make sure we put forward that, I think, very sensible argument.
But, getting your message across on this, even supporters of these policies say it was undermined by the carve-out for home heating oil, which I know applies nationally, but disproportionately benefits our home part of the country in Atlantic Canada. And then they also look at what happened today when Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault had to clarify multiple times, and even after his scrum, what he said or meant to say when he was speaking in Montreal about the federal government no longer funding roads. I mean, what do issues like that do to your ability to explain yourself on simple things when you have to clean up these messes kind of your own making?
There's no mess in what we did with home heating oil by putting a pause on that. There's no mess in that at all. I refute it. If people want to be Puritans about this, I would venture to say that just about every single national financial or social policy in this country has specifics to how it is affected on the ground. In fact, even the price on pollution, any province could do whatever they want with it. As long as they're meeting their targets, we'll go along with it. The backstop is there because it is a backstop if a province comes to it. So I refute that. Home heating oil is a big issue in Atlantic Canada. It's a big issue in Newfoundland and Labrador. It's a big issue in Nova Scotia. And people could not afford the $24,000 it costs to get a heat pump. So why should we be hurting them as a result? No, this gives them the lift. So when people say I say it's actually a strength that we were able to see things as they are on the ground, make changes in the goal of lowering emissions. This is a temporary pause for 3 years. This is how we conduct national politics in this country. It's not, strict principled, must be the same cookie cutter approach. That doesn't work in Canada. It's when politicians, other people in provinces say, we're slightly different over here. In Labrador, we're different than Newfoundland. In Northern Alberta, we're different than Southern Alberta. And you make changes in order to affect a better result. That, to me, is a strength. But anyway, on to the second part of your question.
No, I'm guilty of not being clear in asking a question about a lack of clarity from your colleague, Minister Guilbeault. Your whole news conference today to announce this was dominated largely with questions about what he meant about the federal government's role in paying for roads, on the comments he said in Montreal. I mean, he basically said the existing road network is fine, so the federal government wouldn't be investing in that. Clarified that to say he was talking about big projects like the one in Quebec City, and has later clarified as saying he was only talking about the one in Quebec City. I mean, how do you think commuters in the 905, people in central Newfoundland who just had the Bishops Falls to Grand Falls Windsor highway expanded, are viewing comments like that when there are infrastructure needs across the country for commuting, for transit, and for economic corridors that people are hoping the federal government plays a role in?
Indeed, and we're twinning a big section of the Trans-Canada Highway on the island of Newfoundland. We had a huge part to play in the Trans-Labrador Highway as well. So, I mean, that's just out my way. As the Prime Minister reiterated today in question period, Champlain Bridge. I was just down in Windsor, actually, a couple of months ago. Saw the Gordie Howe Bridge being built. So, look, EV's got to drive on something, and they drive on roads. So we will be involved in roads, as we always have been. There's no change in policy. Minister Guilbeault, as he reiterated time and again, he was taken out of context. I wasn't there for the full speech. I take him at his word. And the Prime Minister reiterated our policy today in question period.
There's a criticism, though, from Premier Ford, who your government has worked with quite closely on things, saying your government doesn't care if commuters are sitting in gridlock. And Daniel Smith also criticized the government, which is well, not unfamiliar territory for her and Minister Guilbeault, but how do you push back against that when one of your big provincial allies is upset with what Minister Guilbeault had to say today?
Well, Premier Ford is somebody who we have, found agreement with time and again, no question, but he's also, progressive conservative, and, Danielle Smith is the United Conservative Party. I mean, these are different parties, and when they come out and they see an opportunity, a political opportunity, they're going to take that political opportunity. Minister Guilbeault came out and said, completely taken out of context, this is what I meant. Prime Minister reiterated our policy hasn't changed, and we have clear examples of where, the proof is in the pudding. We're doing the work now.
Labour Minister Seamus O'Regan, thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks.